Welcome back to Ask Your Injury Lawyers. I'm your host, Rob Taormina, and today we've got a great conversation. We're going to be continuing this topic, talking about the importance of potential clients to be speaking with, at the very least, speaking with experienced trial lawyers, and definitely hiring experienced trial lawyers. And to help us out with this conversation, we've got a legend in this particular space, personal injury lawyer Evan Gewirtz, who's going to be here with us. Evan, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. I appreciate your time. I've known you a little bit. I know you've known Dan a lot, but just do me a favor, if you could just introduce yourself to our entire audience, who you are, how long you've been practicing, and then we'll get into our conversation about your history with Dan, and then your history as an experienced trial lawyer.
Rob, I've been practicing for 33 years, and my relationship with Dan goes back up 32 years. I knew Dan after I'd been trying cases for about a year, and as it turned out, one of his trial lawyers, we were back-to-back in courtrooms in Brooklyn. And when I was on a break, I'd go into his courtroom, and when he was on a break, he'd go into my courtroom. And we struck up a relationship, and he said, Dan is looking for trial lawyers who can really represent the firm well. And he saw me on trial, and he liked what he saw, and he suggested that I meet up with Dan. And so literally 32 years ago, I went to Dan's office, and we had a long conversation, and I developed a trial counsel relationship where I would come in and try the cases that he thought would be appropriate for me. And he had a very busy trial calendar. So it's been a great relationship.
That's incredible. Now, how do you think that your skills and Dan's skills sort of complemented each other, and what drew you to sort of agree with Dan to start working together? I know you guys go back a long time, and I'm gonna endorse you for yourself, because I know you guys don't like to talk about yourselves, but you're a phenomenal attorney and you've got an incredible experience, and so does Dan, right? And so when you guys joined forces, it's like the super team, it's like the dream team. So what drew you to Dan early on, and then in your opinion, like, how do your skills complement each other as attorneys?
Well, I had known about the Buttafuoco law firm, and it was very complimentary when one of his excellent trial lawyers saw me on trial and suggested that we meet up and join forces. That was a great introduction for me, because I was a relatively young lawyer, and to try cases for the Buttafuoco law firm, that was a great honor. And meeting Dan and having the opportunity to speak to him at length, we really hit it off. And it was when I saw the cases that I was getting, they were good cases, and those cases were prepped beautifully. The files were in great condition. Every file folder was broken down. I remember Mark Freely was one of the lawyers that wasn't trying cases at that point, but he was a phenomenal lawyer, and I believe he's still with Dan's firm.
Yeah,
and,
he's the managing attorney.
Yeah, Mark's cases, I used his cases as a model for how I arrange my own cases.
You're kidding, do you really?
Yeah,
Mark is meticulous. You're absolutely right. He's like a little OCD when it comes to his cases, and you basically just summed up Mark for everyone.
And that it couldn't be more true. So looking at how well prepared the cases were and how they got all of the experts lined up for trial, it makes my job really easy as the trial lawyer. I've tried cases for 50 law firms over the years, and I can't tell you how many times I come into a case and there are problems. I see things that weren't exchanged, expert notices that weren't done properly, and I literally I used to carry around case law in my trial bag for the excuses I would make for other law firms. I can tell you that never happened with Dan's cases, because those cases were prepared meticulously and experts properly prepared for every single case.
Wow. In your opinion, obviously, you just mentioned that you've worked with, over 50 law firms. What do you think is the value in collaboration in complicated litigation?
When you have a team like Dan has, it's always, no matter how many cases you've tried, and I've tried, like I said, 50 other law firms, as trial counsel, 350 or more cases over the years just for trial. And obviously I handled thousands of cases, but for trial, at least over 350. And a lot of them for Dan. So when you have the opportunity to bounce ideas off of experienced trial lawyers like Dan, like Sean Alfano, who's been working with Dan for so long, and other trial lawyers that have been with Dan's firms, that's invaluable because they call on me on cases that we're not necessarily working on together at that moment. You bounce ideas off of other excellent trial lawyers, and it is an invaluable way to practice.
Since you've known Dan for a while, I'm going to be able to ask some personal questions here. Dan does have a phenomenal track record, and a lot of people admire him. They respect him. You're someone, one of the few people that you've known him a long time. What was his sort of like reputation back then as an attorney, and now, how, in your opinion, why is it valuable? Why is it important for clients to be able to work with people like you, people with an incredible track record like Dan? So let's bring it to the current. But first, I want us to peer back into go back in time a little bit. And if you could let us know, like, what was Dan like, 33 years ago when you first met him, and what was his experience? What was his sort of reputation back then?
Dan had a great reputation. He was known as an excellent trial lawyer, and he has a sign in his office that really sums it all up. He's there to help rebuild lives, and that is really the way he practices. He's got a great temperament as a trial lawyer. He's got a reputation, excellent trial lawyer. His firm has got an excellent reputation. And something you said, which is, I tell my clients all the time, when you're with a firm that does not try cases, the insurance companies know, hey, ABC law firm, they're not going to take this case to trial because they're a settling law firm. So the insurance companies have algorithms. They know what firms are doing. And when you have a firm that doesn't try cases, the insurance company, what is their incentive to offer their best settlement? Because they know you're not going to take this case to trial. Whereas Dan's firm is a trial firm, and the insurance company knows if they don't offer their best settlement, there is the threat of verdict. And I know that from knowing Dan's firm, knowing his trial lawyers, knowing the way he practices. I know it from my experience in trying cases for him. We take cases to verdict where the settlement is not where we want it to be. And I think it very often settlements are earlier and at a much higher level because of the fact that Dan takes cases to trial and to verdict as well as I do. So that is invaluable to clients. It is one of the most important factors in determining what that result is going to be.
That little clip that you just said, everyone needs to go back and rewatch and re-listen to this. If you've got a friend who is right now in a position where they are considering hiring an attorney, or any type of, yourself, you're in a position where you need to hire an attorney, send this to them. Evan, honestly, what you just said there perfectly articulates the importance of hiring the right lawyer. Like not all lawyers, practice the same, area of law, and it's important, like you just said, to get someone who is experienced in a very specific area of law. And in your case, and I want to talk about right now, this is the perfect transition, is what are the advantages? And I know you sort of touched on it a little bit, but I would like to just break it down. Let's break it down into what are the top, in your opinion, the top 4 advantages for someone to hire an attorney who has experience, lengthy history, experience of being in the courtroom from the perspective of, if you can hit on, what are the advantages when it comes to the insurance companies? What are the advantages of it for the client themselves? If you can break down that for me, and I'll start you off, and then I'll let you run with this one. Will a trial lawyer get better results than a lawyer who's just going to settle outside of the courtroom?
If you have a track record of successful trials, verdicts, which I do, which Dan's firm has to the nth degree, you start with the insurance company knowing they're in for a battle if they don't offer the right settlement. They know the threat of verdict is there. They know you're not there to play games. You will have your experts lined up, the right experts, the experts that are going to help you win the case. You will be prepared to bring that case right through a damages trial, right to a verdict. So verdict is the number one, verdict and settlement is the number one advantage, because that's what the clients are looking for. They're looking for great results. And that's what they're going to get when they hire, Buttafuoco Associates, and at times when I try cases for Dan. Let me highlight something else. So in our last segment, so what was Dan's reputation? How did I know Dan? After I tried cases for about 8 years or so, I was recruited to teach in the NIDA Trial Techniques program, National Institute for Trial Advocacy Trial Techniques program at Hofstra Law School. So I went in and taught students and lawyers different areas of trial practice. And I go in there, and who do I meet? My friend Dan Buttafuoco. So Dan was also teaching at NIDA, and that program is, by my opinion, the number one program to be in to start as a trial lawyer. I took it at Hofstra Law School. Dan took it, and then we both coincidentally ended up teaching in it, which, again, he wouldn't have been there if his reputation as a trial lawyer was anything but excellent. And we both had the opportunity to teach together. That was great.
You're making a really great point, and it's a point of a proven track record. And what lends to that is, number one, getting great results for cases, but do your peers recognize you as being a leader in this particular space? Evan, I know your peers recognize you, and even, from what you're sharing here, Dan has been recognized as being a leader as an attorney, it sounds like, for a long time. And you're just saying, being, asked to teach. This was a class at law school. Is that right?
Yeah, so the National Institute for Trial Advocacy, they have different law schools across the country that they run this trial program. And students can take the course between semesters, typically in the winter. And the lawyers, typically lawyers in big corporate firms, they don't get a lot of opportunity to try cases. Mm-hmm. So they want them, they just can't jump into a trial. So they have them start by taking the NIDA program at Hofstra. They give it at Harvard. They give it at all various law schools across the country. And typically, always, there are experienced trial lawyers that are asked to teach in these classes for students and lawyers. So it just was a coincidence that Dan and I were teaching at that for a number of years together.
On the screen here is all prior case results. Now, you have mentioned, being an experienced trial lawyer, you've tried over 300 cases in your career. It matters. It makes a huge difference to maximize results for the clients. If you don't mind talking a little bit about maybe some cases that come to mind that you have worked on, so that people can understand, the level of really how complicated these cases that you're working on are. And it does in fact take a lot of work. It takes someone who's very bright, who's experienced, who knows the courtroom process, I've said this before about a number of other attorneys. There's another attorney at Buttafuoco Associates, Jim McCarthy, and I tell him, because he works on all the medical malpractice cases, as you know, and I tell him, I'm like, you know so much about the medical industry. It's almost like you're a doctor, and for you know so much about this. It's almost like you guys are actual doctors, and you can really represent as an authority in all these various things, because this is how much you immerse yourself. So could you do me a favor? Are there maybe a couple cases that come to mind that you can share? Obviously, you don't have to name the name of the case, but share some of the details of these cases, because there's going to be someone watching and listening that might relate to this moment, and they don't realize that they need someone like you, but maybe hearing you talk about this case, they realize, you know what, I need to talk with Evan.
You mentioned Jim McCarthy. Jim McCarthy and Mark, I've been with Dan's firm as trial counsel for 32 years. They've been there the exact same time, or maybe a year or two before that. So I've been working with Jim and Mark for all of those years. And Jim, you talk about malpractice. Jim is the go-to guy for med mal. When I have a med mal issue, I want to discuss a case, what he thinks the merits are, I go to Jim. And I've tried med mal cases for Dan's firm, and Jim is the med mal guy, and he is phenomenal. He is a great lawyer. And to this day, we talk about med mal cases all the time. So that's something I really want to mention, because Mark's been there for 30 some odd years. Excellent lawyer, and the same thing with Jim.
Isn't it amazing? And I'm sorry to interrupt. But you just mentioned something, and it's not something that I had put it in our notes here for today's topic. But you talk about attorneys at the firm that have been there for such a long time, and I think that is also something that should be taken into consideration, because it speaks highly of the culture, the work culture, the dynamics at the law firm. These are attorneys that have not left the firm. This, have working as an attorney for a while. There's high turnover in this space, but yet you guys have been working together for over 3 decades. Mark and Jim has been there for 3 decades. That says a lot. And I think for a client considering hiring an attorney, wouldn't that be something that would be valuable for them to know?
It is extremely valuable, because there's a cohesiveness that you can't get if you have lawyers jumping in and out of your firm. And it's not just Mark and Jim. Sean Alfano has been here off many, many years. I'm bouncing things off of Sean. Sean's asking me questions about trials. This is a relationship that it's a give and take for both of us. And it's not only the lawyers. There are paralegals that have been with Dan for that whole time. I know a couple of the paralegals that have been there for 30 years as well. So there's just a family attitude and a presence that is just invaluable for clients. So you mentioned a case. What is a case that I worked on that's been influential in my career? There was a case for Dan. It was a really difficult case, because we had a client. Seems like an easy case. She was in a vehicle. She was struck by a police vehicle, and she was a passenger. You say, well, it's got to be an easy case. It's not an easy case, because it is not a negligence case. When you get involved in an accident with a police vehicle, the standard of proof goes from negligence to recklessness. And that was the challenge in this case. How are we going to find recklessness on this police vehicle? And the reason why that standard was raised to recklessness is because he was involved in a chase at the time. And the case was prepared perfectly, but we still had that standard. And I noticed on the police report, before I was going to depose the officer, that there were some inconsistencies in what he checked off in their boxes on the right side of a police report. And there's a description of the accident, and the boxes didn't fit the description. And when I deposed the officer, he described that, the supervisor, who was supervisor for the officer that went to the scene, he said the wrong box was checked off, and it showed that they felt that officer in their internal investigation was speeding, and unnecessarily so. And it was exceeding the speed that they should have been, even involved in the situation he was. And based upon that testimony at that EBT, that case went from a case that we would likely have had a very difficult time proving a trial, and it ended up resulting in a $2.5 million settlement.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And that was one of Dan's cases, and it really goes to the thorough preparation that went into that trial before I took that case, and the thorough preparation once I did start handling that case. And that made the difference in that case.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. So, because of the work that you put into it, and we're able to discover that and I'm just going to ask a question. It's like ignorant question here. I'm not an attorney, right? But from what I'm hearing here is that obviously having someone like you, these experienced trial lawyers, like Sean, these experienced trial lawyers, you do maximize compensation. So you go from, I hate simplifying it like this, but could you get 3 times the amount of money than for a client if you go to trial versus not going to trial? I mean, is it really could it be that cut and dry, that these cases that you determine, yes, this is a case that needs to go to trial? Is there the potential for actually increasing compensation on behalf of these clients?
Without a doubt. Okay, I've told you I tried cases for 50 other law firms. There are very, very few who come close to preparing the cases the way Dan does, and the way Jim, Mark, Sean Alfano. These cases are just impeccably prepared, proper experts. I've gotten cases from many different types of law firms that they're very busy and maybe don't take the time to prepare the cases, get the right experts. And you say, is there a difference when you take that case from a law firm that maybe didn't prepare it the way you would have or the way Dan would have? And in those situations, again, this is over 33 years of experience, 50 different law firms, 350 trials. My experience is there's typically, from the offer that I got from one of those other law firms to what the end result is, either by verdict or typically settlement during trial, is usually a 4 times increase. So
wow.
The offer was $200 before I got the case. Typically, they'll end in a verdict or settlement in the $800,000 range. I would say that is a fair estimate of the average.
Wow. That's incredible. People need to, I'm going to make sure we put that on the screen there. People need to know this, that there is a big difference in the work that you are doing for these clients. And obviously, you want an attorney that can, that has the resources, because something else that I've learned, it's not free and it's not cheap to be able to go to trial to the degree that a case needs, right? I mean, there's experts that you have to bring in, there's lots of, so to having a firm that has the resources that can do this is a big deal. Let me ask you something. I'm going to go back a little bit again before we end here. Was there a moment that you can recall that working with Dan, you realized saying yes to him 33 years ago, this was the right move for you?
I wouldn't say there was one moment. I would say it was the entire experience. Dan and I are good friends at this point, seeing the great preparation of the cases, the willingness to spend the money. There are cases we've had, there are $60,000 in experts. And like I said, this is not a cheap business. You have to spend the money to get the proper experts to get your case properly heard by a jury.
It's not common to have 2 attorneys of your, or in this case, you and the attorneys at Buttafuoco Associates, the attorneys of your caliber, to work together. I know I said this earlier, I'm going to say it again. Any clients that get to work with you guys, both Evan, you and the team at Buttafuoco Associates, honestly, it's like hiring the dream team. It's the Avengers of of the legal world of lawyering. And it's incredible that they get access to you guys and have you guys work on their cases, and they're better for it. And we highly recommend, obviously, this team up. And so before we let you go, is there anything else you feel like might be really important for people to know about you and your track record, what you guys are doing, and the future of personal injury law?
From my perspective, the preparation that goes into a case, again, the way Mark, or the way I saw him arrange his files, the way Jim analyzes medical malpractice cases. And I've taken that when I was a relatively young lawyer. I saw that and I've adopted it. And in my own practice, to me, there's only one way to really prepare for a case. Outline those depositions, give it to your client, let them see the important testimony, give them a medical outline of all of their, in chronological order, of all the treatment that they've had, so they're well prepared for trial. Give them the direct testimony so that they can understand the questions and have an opportunity to review them in advance. You've got to give your clients the best chance for their best outcome. And that's what's done at Buttafuoco Associates, and that's what I did. And that preparation is invaluable in what the end result is.
I am so grateful that you took time out of your very, very busy schedule to spend time with us and educating the audience about what you do and the relationship you have with Dan and the firm and your history and your track record. I am so grateful for you and for you sharing all your expertise here today.
Yep, my pleasure, Rob. It's great talking with you.
Alrighty. Well, there you have it, guys. Evan, definitely check him out and check out Buttafuoco and Associates. It's so important for you to connect with an attorney, with a law firm, with experienced trial experience. And you can look that up you look up the track record. You can go online. It's available. If you are hurt due to the negligence of another, it is important for you to have someone fighting for you. If you have a serious injury, you want a serious attorney, definitely contact the attorneys at Buttafuoco Associates. They're helping accident victims rebuild their lives. We'll see you next time on Ask Your Injury Lawyers. Take care.